Jai Hind, welcome to Computology Academy. And today we will review about the history of pandemic since 1800 AD. So the history of pandemic is very old, and in the ancient eras also there had been various pandemics, but we will go in the depth of that, then the video will be very large. So we will see about the pandemics since last 220 years only. So welcome to Computology Academy, and do subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new videos. So myself Vidyanand Singh, let us start. So first of all, we will look after what is the definition of the different aspects related to pandemic. So first of all comes the outbreak. So the outbreak is the first stage whenever there is a detection of new kind of disease about which the human beings are unknown, or a new strain of virus or bacterial infection, whatever it is, about which there is no availability of the cure or the vaccine or etc. anything, or whenever there is the outbreak of old diseases which had been eradicated in the past but again it has reappeared, then it is called as the outbreak. So outbreak is the resurfacing or the infection of the new diseases to the human communities. Okay, thereafter comes the epidemic. So if we consider Wuhan as a small space, so if there is infection in Wuhan of a single person or a small amount of person, then it is considered as the outbreak. So 17th November 2019, when the first case in the Wuhan about the coronavirus was detected, then it is considered as an outbreak. But when it spread throughout the Wuhan city, then it is called as the epidemic. So epidemic is the infection of the people. When the stage of the disease comes, then when the more people are infected in a related community, and it may be in the Wuhan city or throughout China, that is still it is within the boundaries of a nation, so then it is considered as the epidemic. So here what happens, epidemic is the infectious disease when it quickly infects more people. Okay, and here the outbreak resurfaces as the epidemic. But when a disease crosses the nation's boundary and it spreads through more nations or the continents throughout the world, then it is considered as the pandemic. So when the coronavirus transpassed the border of China and infected more people in the different countries and the continents, then it became a pandemic. So now let us see the history of the pandemics. The first pandemic in 1817 was first cholera pandemic. It was a intestine infection and small intestine infection that spread through the rats and the infected food and the dirty water, and this had originated in Russia where 1 million people had died, and this infection crossed the border of Russia and it reached to Britain through the British soldiers, and thereafter through the British soldiers, as it was the colonial era and the Britishers having the colonies in the different continents, they spread this pandemic throughout the world, and because of this many people had died in Spain, Africa, Indonesia, China, Japan, Italy, Germany and various other regions, and about 1,50,000 people died because of this pandemic. So here you can see this was 19th century and second decade. So here note this point, 19th century, second decade. So the second decade of every century in the world since 1500 has been a time when the world has faced pandemic again and again. Now come to the next. So here in 1855 there was third plague. So the first plague was in 541 in Greece. Thereafter the second plague was in 1350 again in Europe. But the third plague surfaced in China in the Yunnan province of China. This third plague had appeared and it moved from China to Hong Kong and thereafter to India, as at that very time also China was a colony of various other countries, and in that Britishers were having also a stake. And during that time, in 1855, the steam engine had been already developed, and most of the industries and the locomotives were working on the steam energy, and that was a coal-fired energy. So Yunnan is a province where there is abundant of coal, and there was a mining boom to extract coal and to feed the industries, to energize the industries. And because of this there was a huge mining, and because of this what happened in this region, many laborers came and received to work in the mining, and the sanitation condition and the livelihood condition was not good, and because of that what happened, it became a spreading ground for the rats. And because of that what happened, the plague spread through Yunnan, and from there it spread to the different regions. From Yunnan it came to Hong Kong, and thereafter to India. And because of this bubonic plague, around 1.5 crore, that is 15 million people lost their life. So this pandemic was a huge setback for different regions. And because of this pandemic, what happened in India, there was also an unrest, and that led to the 1857 revolt. And because of this pandemic, in the name of restraining this pandemic from spreading, the Britishers used various suppressive strategies against the Indians, and this pandemic had continued till 1960. Again and again it resurfaced. It resurfaced in 1897 in India. And because of this, what had happened, there was a plague commission under the Commissioner Rand, Plague Commissioner Rand, who had got killed in Pune. And thereafter what had happened, Bal Gangadhar Tilak had got arrested in the name of killing of the Plague Commissioner Rand. Now come to 1875 Fiji missiles. So Fiji is a small island in the north of Australia, and that had got ceded to the British Empire. So when they had ceded it to the British Empire, so the royal family of the Fiji had got invited to meet the Queen Victoria and to receive the gifts from Queen Victoria. But at that very time there was a measles epidemic was going on in Australia, and this royal family brought this disease to the island. And when they were redistributing the gifts received from the royal family of Britishers, they spread the measles also in the island. And because of this, what had happened, many of the tribals got infected because of this measles, and they had lost their lives. So number of villages had got completely eradicated, and more than 40,000 people lost their lives. So spread of this pandemic was not so huge, but what had happened, the situation was very grim. Most of the peoples died in this. About 1/3 of the population had got eradicated in this Fiji island, and the number of villages had burnt down to stop the spread of this pandemic. Now the Russian flu. So the Russian flu had started in Siberia and Kazakhstan in the birds, and this is the time 1889 when the flu as a pandemic had surfaced in the world arena. Before this, flu was not a pandemic, a kind of infectious disease, but after this the flu became a major pandemic, and time and again it has resurfaced in different variants. And from Siberia it traveled to Moscow, and from Moscow it traveled to Finland in the Norwegian countries, and thereafter from the Nordic countries it traveled to Poland, thereafter rest of the Europe, and from Europe it had got distributed throughout the world as it was a time of colonial era. And till the end of 1890, around 360,000 people died of because of this Russian flu. Thereafter there was Spanish flu. So again, to have a look, 20th century, second decade, Spanish flu, a major pandemic. It had surfaced in the Madrid in Spain, and thereafter it traveled from Madrid to USA, that is America. When America was a colony, it was it had been colonized by the Spanish also, and because of this what has happened, there is a great amount of population living in United States of America, that is Spaniards, and because of this they are used to travel regularly to United States of America, and because of this what had happened, they brought this Spanish flu to America, and from America it got redistributed to various regions, and because of this what had happened, many of the people lost their life, and it had got eradicated by itself by summer of 1919, and because of this Spanish flu, many of the people lost their life, or they had lost their life, or they got immunized by their own, they developed the immunity against that, but there was no vaccine developed because of the lack of information, and the pandemic got eradicated by itself by the summer of 1919, and same thing was thought by the people this time also during the COVID, that after the summer it will get away itself, but this has not happened, and the second wave resurfaced. Now come to the Asian flu, again flu, that is of 1957. This has started in Hong Kong and spread through China, and thereafter it got to United States, and here also around 14,000 people died, and it had the widespread effect in England and Europe also, and it again occurred in the second wave in 1958, and in the second wave around 11 lakh people lost their life, and of that 1,16,000 people lost their life in United States itself. So the second wave of any pandemic is more dangerous than the first wave, and the third wave will be again more dangerous than the second wave. This is because whenever a virus mutates, it develops its efficiency more than the earlier one against the immunity of any body or any people, and this genetic mutation makes them more infectious and more harmful and more contagious, and this is what is happening in case of COVID also, and a vaccine for this flu had got developed with the passage of time, but again and again it has contaminated, or it has affected the people, and the vaccine is the only way through which it gets cured. Thereafter the 1981 HIV AIDS. So in 1981 HIV AIDS had got detected as a pandemic, but it had surfaced in a chimpanzee in West Africa in 1920s. So in 1920s it had surfaced in a chimpanzee as a infectious disease, and from here it traveled to Haiti, and from Haiti it traveled to San Francisco, and from San Francisco it spread throughout the United States, and New York and San Francisco was the main hotspots during this pandemic in 1960s. And thereafter it infected more and more people throughout the world, and around 3.5 crores, that is 35 million people lost their life due to this pandemic. So what happens in this pandemic? It destroys the immunity system of a person, and because of this people are unable to fight against the common diseases even, and this leads to fever, headache, enlargement of lymph nodes. So what are the lymph nodes? Lymph nodes are the nodes, glands at the joints, like here in the shoulder or other places, and here these glands secretes the immunity serums, and when these nodes get inflated or enlarged, that is swelling occurs, then they are unable to secrete these serums, and because of this the immunity of a person deteriorates, and because of this it led to a pandemic. But with the passage of time, there has been some medicines got developed that slows down the process of infection. There is still lack of vaccine, there is still lack of any medicine which can completely cure this disease, but there are some medicines which reduces the pace with which the body gets infected because of this disease. So only the pace has got reduced, but still it is a contagious disease. It is an infectious disease which can harm a person with a fatal effect. Now, SARS, that is of 2003. So the SARS in 2003 was the earlier version of a kind of COVID. So here what had happened, it had also resurfaced, it has also started in China, and it is also a respiratory disease where the people faces the problem of dry cough, fever, head and body ache, etc. And here the respiratory system gets destroyed. Here the amount of infected people and the number of deaths was very less. It was not so huge. That is, the infection was of around 8,096 people and only 774 people had died. But what had happened here, the WHO had taken the active steps to reduce the infection and to contain the infection. Because of this, what had happened, there was less amount of fatal deaths. And what had happened here also, it had got spread to 26 countries. And here at that very time also, China had not informed the world community about such kind of infectious disease, and they had restrained the information from spreading. And again, they are at that very time also they had been criticized, but at that very time what they did, from that they got the knowledge that such kind of disease or such kind of virus can be used as the biological weapon, and that is what they are doing. Since 2015, they are preparing this virus as a weapon. For this, I have made another video. You can go to the playlist and you can watch that. And during this, also China was criticized, and the SARS outbreak had taught a lesson to the world community to how to contain or to restrain any contagious disease from spreading out. And this had helped the world community from restraining the spread of H1N1 flu, Ebola and Zika virus. But at this time, during the COVID, there was a kind of collusion between WHO and China. And at this time, what had happened, although the information about first case of COVID was there in 17 November 2019, still China did not inform the world community, and only the information spread out in December 2019 when a doctor, ophthalmologist, Dr. Li Wenling, defined the government orders, and he spread an information about this disease to his doctor community. And because of this, what had happened, he was charged with criminal activities, and later on, after 1 month, he died by corona itself. And thereafter, what had happened, after the pressurization of the world community and different organizations, the information was spread out by the WHO, and thereafter only WHO officially declared it as a pandemic in March 2000, when it had already spread through 114 countries and more than 118,000 cases were there. And this was the case where you can see that how WHO had mishandled this situation. And what is the situation now? After the dissemination of information from China and WHO, without the availability of vaccine, the countries started to lock down their nation, to start restraining the world travel or the international travels. Airways were restrained, but till then it was very late, and by the mid of March, more than 163 countries were having the coronavirus within their boundaries, and at present there are around 35 lakh people who have lost their life, and around 58 crore infected people are there in the world. So this is the situation, grim situation, what has happened due to the spread of coronavirus, and because of the mishandling of the situation by China as well as the WHO. So this is the history of the pandemic we have seen. Now I will sign off here. Do subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get informed whenever we upload new videos. Thank you very much and have a nice day.